Audiobook of Vipassana Meditation, The Art of Living as taught by Goenka. Forward. I am forever grateful for the change that Vipassana meditation has wrought in my life. When I first learned this technique, I felt as though I had been wandering in a maze of blind alleys and now at last had found the royal road. In the years since then, I have kept following this road, and with every step, the goal has become clearer. Liberation from all suffering, full enlightenment. I cannot claim to have reached the final goal, but I have no doubt that this way leads directly there. For showing me this way, I am always indebted to Sayagai, Ubakhin, and to the chain of teachers who kept the technique alive through millennia from the time of the Buddha. On behalf of them, all I encourage others to take this road so that they also may find the way out of suffering. Although many thousands of people from Western countries have learned it, up to now, no book has appeared that accurately describes this form of Vipassana at length. I am pleased that at last a serious meditator has undertaken to fill this gap. May this book deepen the understanding of those who practice meditation, and may it encourage others to try this technique so that they too may experience the happiness of liberation. May every reader learn the art of living in order to find peace and harmony within and to generate peace and harmony for others. May all beings be happy. Goenka. Preface. Among the various types of meditation in the world today, the Vipassana method taught by Goenka is unique. This technique is a simple, logical way to achieve real peace of mind and to lead a happy, useful life. Long preserved within the Buddhist community in Burma, Vipassana itself contains nothing of a sectarian nature and can be accepted and applied by people of any background. Goenka is a retired industrialist and a former leader of the Indian community in Burma. Born into a conservative Hindu family, he suffered from youth onward from severe migraine headaches. His search for a cure brought him into contact in 1955 with Sayagi Ubakhin, who combined the public role of a senior civil servant with the private role of a teacher of meditation. In learning Vipassana from Ubakhin, Mr. Goenka found a discipline that went far beyond alleviating the symptoms of physical disease and transcended cultural and religious barriers. Vipassana gradually transformed his life in the ensuing years of practice and study under the guidance of his teacher. In 1969, Mr. Goenka was authorized as a teacher of Vipassana meditation by Ubakhin. In that year, he came to India and began teaching Vipassana there, reintroducing this technique into the land of its origin. In a country still sharply divided by caste and religion, Mr. Goenka's courses have attracted thousands of people of every background. Thousands of Westerners have also participated in Vipassana courses, attracted by the practical nature of the technique. The qualities of Vipassana are exemplified by Mr. Goenka himself. He is a pragmatic person in touch with the ordinary realities of life and able to deal with them incisively, but in every situation he maintains an extraordinary calmness of mind. Along with that, calmness is a deep compassion for others, an ability to emphasize with virtually any human being. There is, however, nothing solemn about him. He has an engaging sense of humor which he exercises in his teaching. Course participants long remember his smile, his laughter, and his often repeated motto, "Be happy." Clearly, Vipassana has brought him happiness, and he is eager to share that happiness with others by showing them the technique that has worked so well for him. Despite his magnetic presence, Mr. Goenka has no wish to be a guru who turns his disciples into automatons. Instead, he teaches self-responsibility. The real test of Vipassana, he says, is applying it in life. He encourages meditators, but not to sit at his feet, but to go out and live happily in the world. He shuns all expressions of devotion to him, instead directing his students to be devoted to the technique, to the truth that they find within themselves. In Burma, it has traditionally been the prerogative of Buddhist monks to teach meditation. Like his teacher, however, Mr. Goenka is a layman and is the head of a large family. Nevertheless, the clarity of his teaching and the efficacy of the technique itself have won the approval of senior monks in Burma, India, and Sri Lanka, a number of whom have taken courses under his guidance. To maintain its purity, Mr. Goenka insists meditation must never become a business. Courses and centers operating under his direction are all run on a totally non-profit basis. He himself receives no remuneration for his work directly or indirectly, nor do the assistant teachers whom he has authorized to teach courses as his representatives. He distributes the technique of Vipassana purely as a service to humanity to help those who are in need of help. S.N. Goenka is one of the few Indian spiritual leaders as highly respected in India as in the West. However, he has never sought publicity, preferring to rely on word of mouth to spread interest in Vipassana. And he has always emphasized the importance of actual meditation practice over mere writings about meditation. For these reasons, he is less widely known than he deserves to be. This book is the first full-length study of his teaching, prepared under his guidance and with his approval. The principal source materials for this work are the discourses given by Mr. Goenka during a 10-day Vipassana course and, to a lesser extent, his written articles in English. I have used these materials freely, borrowing not only lines of argument and organization of specific points, but also examples given in the discourses and frequently exact wording, even entire sentences. To those who have participated in Vipassana meditation courses as taught by him, Much of this book will certainly be familiar, and they may even be able to identify the particular discourse or article that has been used at a certain point in the text. During a course, the explanations of the teacher are accompanied step by step by the experience of the participants in meditation. Here, the material has been reorganized for the benefit of a different audience, people who are merely reading about meditation without necessarily having practiced it. For such readers, an attempt has been made to present the teaching as it is actually experienced. A logical progression flowing unbroken from the first step to the final goal. That organic wholeness is most easily apparent to the meditator, but this work tries to provide non meditators with a glimpse of the teaching as it unfolds to one who practices it. Certain sections deliberately preserve the tone of the spoken word in order to convey a more vivid impression of the way in which Mr. Goenka teaches. These sections are the stories set between the chapters and the questions and answers that conclude each chapter. Dialogues taken from actual discussion with students during a course or in private interviews. Some of the stories are drawn from events in the life of the Buddha, others from the rich Indian heritage of folk tales, and others still from the personal experiences of Mr. Goenka. All are narrated in his own words, not with the intention of improving on the originals, but simply to present the stories in a fresh way, emphasizing their relevance to the practice of meditation. These stories lighten the serious atmosphere of a Vipassana course and offer inspiration by illustrating central points of the teaching in memorable form. Of the many such stories told in a 10-day course, only a small section has been included here. Quotations are from the oldest and most widely accepted record of Buddha's words. The discourse collection, Sutta Pitaka, as it has been preserved in the ancient Pali language in Theravadan Buddhist countries. To maintain a uniform tone throughout the book, I have attempted to translate afresh all the passage quoted here. In doing so, I have taken guidance from the work of leading modern translators. However, since this is not a scholarly work, I have not striven to achieve word for word accuracy in translating the Pali. Instead, I have tried to convey in straightforward language the sense of each passage as it appears to a Vipassana meditator in the light of his meditation experience. Perhaps the rendering of certain words or passages may seem unorthodox, but in matters of substance, I hope the English follows the most literal meaning of the original text. For the sake of consistency and precision, Buddhist terms used in the text have been given in their Pali forms, even though in some cases the Sanskrit may be more familiar to readers of English. For example, the Pali Dhamma is used in place of the Sanskrit Dharma. Kama instead of karma. Nibbana instead of Nirvana, Sankhara instead of Sanskar. To make the text easier to understand, Pali words have been pluralized in English style by adding S. In general, Pali words in the text have been kept to a minimum to avoid unnecessary obscurity. However, they often offer a convenient shorthand for certain concepts unfamiliar to Western thought, which cannot easily be expressed in a single word in English. For this reason, at points, it has seemed preferable to use the Pali rather than a longer English phrase. All Pali forms printed in boldface type are defined in the glossary at the back of this book. The technique of Vipassana offers equal benefits to all who practice without any discrimination on the basis of race, class, or sex. In order to remain faithful to this universal approach, I have tried to avoid using sexually exclusive language in the text. At points, however, I have used the pronoun he to refer to a meditator of unspecified gender. Readers are asked to consider the usage as sexually indeterminate. There is no intention of excluding women or giving undue prominence to men, since such a partiality would be contrary to the basic teaching and spirit of Vipassana. I am grateful to the many who helped on this project. In particular, I wish to express my deep gratitude to S.N. Goenka for taking time from his busy schedule to look over the work as it developed, and even more for guiding me to take a few beginning steps on the path described here. In a deeper sense, the true author of this work is S.N. Goenka, since my purpose is simply to present his transmission of the teaching of the Buddha. The merits of this work belong to him. Whatever defects exist are my own responsibility. Introduction. Suppose you had the opportunity to free yourself of all worldly responsibilities for 10 days, with a quiet, secluded place in which to live, protected from disturbances. In this place, the basic physical requirements of room and board would be provided for you, and helpers would be on hand to see that you were reasonably comfortable. In return, you would be expected only to avoid contact with others, and apart from essential activities, to spend all your waking hours with eyes closed, keeping your mind on a chosen object of attention. Would you accept the offer? Suppose you had simply heard that such an opportunity existed and that people like yourself were not only willing but eager to spend their free time in this way. How would you describe their activity? Navel gazing, you might say, or contemplation, escapism, or spiritual retreat, self-intoxication, or self-searching, introversion, or introspection. Whether the connotation is negative or positive, the common impression of meditation is that it is a withdrawal from the world. Of course, there are techniques that function in this way, but meditation need not be an escape. It can also be a means to encounter the world in order to understand it and ourselves. Every human being is conditioned to assume that the real world is outside, that the way to live life is by contact with an external reality, by seeking input, physical and mental, from without. Most of us have never considered severing outward contacts in order to see what happens inside. The idea of doing so probably sounds like choosing to spend hours staring at the test pattern on a television screen. We would rather explore the far side of the moon or the bottom of the ocean than the hidden depths within ourselves. But in fact, the universe exists for each of us only when we experience it with body and mind. It is never elsewhere, it is always here and now. By exploring the here and now of ourselves, we can explore the world. Unless we investigate the world within, we can never know reality. We will only know our beliefs about it or our intellectual conceptions of it. By observing ourselves, however, we can come to know reality directly and can learn to deal with it in a positive, creative way. One method of exploring the inner world is Vipassana meditation, as taught by S.N. Goenka. This is a practical way to examine the reality of one's own body and mind, to uncover and solve whatever problems lie hidden there, to develop unused potential and to channel it for one's own good and the good of others. Vipassana means insight. In the ancient Pali language of India, it is the essence of teaching of the Buddha, the actual experience of the truths of which he spoke. The Buddha himself attained that experience by the practice of meditation, and therefore, meditation is what he primarily taught. His words are records of his experiences in meditation, as well as detailed instructions on how to practice in order to reach the goal he had attained, the experience of truth. This much is widely accepted, but the problem remains of how to understand and follow the instructions given by the Buddha. While his words have been preserved in text of recognized authenticity, the interpretation of the Buddha's meditation instructions is difficult without the context of a living practice. But if a technique exists that has been maintained for unknown generations, that offers the very results described by the Buddha, and if it conforms precisely to his instructions and elucidates points in them that have long seemed obscure, then that technique is surely worth investigating. Vipassana is such a method. It is a technique extraordinary in its simplicity, its lack of all dogma, and above all in the results it offers. Vipassana meditation is taught in courses of 10 days, open to anyone who sincerely wishes to learn the technique and who is fit to do so physically and mentally. During the 10 days, participants remain within the area of the course site, having no contact with the outside world. They refrain from reading and writing and suspend any religious or other practices, working exactly according to the instructions given. For the entire period of the course, they follow a basic code of morality, which includes celibacy and abstention from all intoxicants. They also maintain silence among themselves for the first 9 days of the course, although they are free to discuss meditation problems with the teacher and material problems with the management. During the first 3.5 days, the participants practice an exercise of mental concentration. This is preparatory to the technique of Vipassana proper, which is introduced on the 4th day of the course. Further steps within the practice are introduced each day, so that by the end of the course, the entire technique has been presented in outline. On the 10th day, silence ends and meditators make the transition back to a more extroverted way of life. The course concludes on the morning of the 11th day. The experience of 10 days is likely to contain a number of surprises for the meditator. The first is that meditation is hard work. The popular idea that it is a kind of inactivity or relaxation is soon found to be a misconception. Continual application is needed to direct the mental processes consciously in a particular way. The instructions are to work with full effort, yet without any tension. But until one learns how to do this exercise can be frustrating or even exhausting. Another surprise is that, to begin with, the insights gained by self-observation are not likely to be all present and blissful. Normally, we are very selective in our view of ourselves. When we look into a mirror, we are careful to strike the most flattering pose, the most pleasing expression. In the same way, we each have a mental image of ourselves which emphasizes admirable qualities, minimizes defects, and omits some sides of our character altogether. We see the image that we wish to see, not the reality. But Vipassana meditation is a technique for observing reality from every angle. Instead of a carefully edited self-image, the meditator confronts the whole uncensored truth. Certain aspects of it are bound to be hard to accept. At times it may seem that instead of finding inner peace, one has found nothing but agitation by meditating. Everything about the course may seem unworkable, unacceptable. The heavy timetable, the faculties, the discipline, the instructions and advice of the teacher, the technique itself. Another surprise, however, is that the difficulties pass away. At a certain point, meditators learn to make effortless efforts to maintain a relaxed alertness, a detached involvement. Instead of struggling, they become engrossed in the practice. Now, inadequacy of the facilities seem unimportant. The discipline becomes a helpful support. The hours pass quickly, unnoticed. The mind becomes as calm as a mountain lake at dawn, perfectly mirroring its surroundings and at the same time revealing its depths to those who look more closely. When this clarity comes, every movement, is full of affirmation, beauty, and peace. Thus, the meditator discovers that the technique actually works. Each step in turn may seem an enormous leap, and yet one finds one can do it. At the end of 10 days, it becomes clear how long a journey it has been from the beginning of the course. The meditator has undergone a process analogous to a surgical operation to lancing a pus-filled wound. Cutting open the lesion and pressing on it to remove the pus is painful. But unless this is done, the wound can never heal. Once the pus is removed, one is free of it and of the suffering is caused and can regain full health. Similarly, by passing through a 10-day course, the meditator relieves the mind of some of its tensions and enjoys greater mental health. The process of Vipassana has worked deep changes that persist after the end of the course. The meditator finds that whatever mental strength was gained during the course, whatever was learned, can be applied in daily life for one's own benefit and for the good of others. Life becomes more harmonious, fruitful, and happy. The technique taught by S.N. Goenka is that which he learned from his teacher, the late Sayagyi Ubakhen of Burma, who was taught Vipassana by Saya Uthet, a well-known teacher of meditation in Burma, in the first half of his century. In turn, Saya Uthet was a pupil of Ledi Sayadaw, a famous Burmese scholar monk of the late 19th and early 20th century. Further back, there is no record of the names of the teacher of this technique, but it is believed by those who practice it that Ledi Sayadaw learned Vipassana meditation from traditional teachers who had preserved it through generations since ancient times, when the teaching of Buddha was first introduced into Burma. Certainly, the technique agrees with the instructions of Buddha on meditation, with the simplest, most literal meaning of his words. And most important, it provides results that are good, personal, tangible, and immediate. This book is not a do-it-yourself manual for the practice of Vipassana meditation, and people who use it this way proceed entirely at their own risk. The technique should be learned only in a course where there is a proper environment to support the meditator and a properly trained guide. Meditation is a serious matter, especially the Vipassana technique, which deals with the depths of the mind. It should never be approached lightly or casually. If reading this book inspires you to try Vipassana, you can contact the address listed. The purpose here is merely to give an outline of the Vipassana method as taught by S.N. Goenka, in the hope that this will widen the understanding of the Buddha's teachings and of the meditation technique, that is their essence. Swimology. Once a young professor was making a sea voyage. He was a highly educated man with a long tail of letters after his name. But he had little experience of life. In the crew of the ship on which he was traveling was an illiterate old sailor. Every evening, the sailor would visit the cabin of the young professor to listen to him hold forth on many different subjects. He was very impressed with the learning of the young man. One evening, as the sailor was about to leave the cabin after several hours of conversation, the professor asked, "Old man, have you studied geology?" "What is that, sir?" "The science of the earth." "No, sir. I have never been to any school or college. I have never studied anything." "Old man, you have wasted a quarter of your life." With a long face, the old sailor went away. If such a learned person says so, certainly it must be true, he thought. I have wasted a quarter of my life. Next evening, again, as the sailor was about to leave the cabin, the professor asked him, "Old man, have you studied oceanography?" "What is that, sir?" "The science of the sea." "No, sir. I have never studied anything." "Old man, you have wasted half of your life." With a still longer face, the sailor went away. "I have wasted half my life? This learned man says so." Next evening, once again, the young professor questioned the old sailor. "Old man, have you studied meteorology?" "What is that, sir? I have never even heard of it." "Why, the science of the wind, the rain, the weather." "No, sir. As I told you, I have never been to any school. I have never studied anything." "You have not studied the science of the earth on which you live? You have not studied the science of the sea on which you earn your livelihood? You have not studied the science of the weather which you encounter every day? Old man, you have wasted 3/4 of your life." The old sailor was very unhappy. "This learned man says that I have wasted 3/4 of my life. Certainly, I must have wasted 3/4 of my life." The next day, it was the turn of the old sailor. He came running to the cabin of the young man and cried, "Professor, sir, have you studied swimology?" "Swimology? What do you mean?" "Can you swim, sir?" "No, I don't know how to swim." "Professor, sir, you have wasted your whole life. The ship has struck a rock and is sinking. Those who can swim may reach the nearby shore, but those who cannot swim will drown. I am so sorry, Professor, sir. You have surely lost your life. You may study all the ologies of the world, but if you do not learn swimology, all your studies are useless. You may read and write books on swimming. You may debate on its subtle theoretical aspects, but how will that help you if you refuse to enter the water yourself? You must learn how to swim." The Search, Chapter 1. All of us seek peace and harmony because this is what we lack in our lives. We all want to be happy. We regard it as our right. Yet, happiness is a goal we strive toward more often than attain. At times, we all experience dissatisfaction in life, agitation, irritation, disharmony, suffering. Even if at this moment we are free from such dissatisfactions, we can all remember a time when they afflicted us and can foresee a time when they may recur. Eventually, we all must face the suffering of death. Nor do our personal dissatisfactions remain limited to ourselves. Instead, we keep sharing our suffering with others. The atmosphere around each unhappy person becomes charged with agitation, so that All who enter the environment may also feel agitated and unhappy. In this way, individual tensions combine to create the tensions of society. This is the basic problem of life. Its unsatisfactory nature. Things happen that we do not want. Things that we want do not happen. And we are ignorant of how or why this process works, just as we are each ignorant of our own beginning and end. 25 centuries ago in northern India, a man decided to investigate this problem, the problem of human suffering. After years of searching and trying various methods, he discovered a way to gain insight into the reality of his own nature and to experience true freedom from suffering. Having reached the highest goal of liberation, of release from misery and conflict, he devoted the rest of his life to helping others do as he had done, showing them the way to liberate themselves. The person, Siddhartha Gautam, known as the Buddha, the enlightened one, never claimed to be anything other than a man. Life, like all great teachers, he became the subject of legends. But no matter what marvelous stories were told of his past existences or his miraculous powers, still all accounts agree that he never claimed to be divine or to be divinely inspired. Whatever special qualities he had were preeminently human qualities that he had brought to perfection. Therefore, whatever he achieved is within the grasp of any human being who works as he did. The Buddha did not teach any religion or philosophy or system of belief. He called his teaching Dhamma, that is law, the law of nature. He had no interest in dogma or idle speculation. Instead, he offered a universal practical solution for a universal problem. Now, as before, he said, I teach about suffering and the eradication of suffering. He refused even to discuss anything which did not lead to liberation from misery. This teaching, he insisted, was not something that he had invented or that was divinely revealed to him. It was simply the truth, reality, which by his own efforts he had succeeded in discovering, as many people before him had done, as many people after him would do. He claimed no monopoly on the truth, nor did he assert any special authority for his teaching, neither because of the faith that people had in him, nor because of the apparently logical nature of what he taught. On the contrary, he stated that it is proper to doubt and to test whatever is beyond one's experience. Do not simply believe whatever you are told, or whatever has been handed down from past generations, or what is common opinion, or whatever the scriptures say. Do not accept something as true merely by deduction or inference, or by considering outward appearances, or by partiality for a certain view, or because of its plausibility, or because your teacher tells you it is so. But when you yourselves directly know these principles are unwholesome, blameworthy, condemned by the wise, when adopted and carried out, they lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. And when you yourselves directly know these principles are wholesome, blameless, praised by the wise, then when adopted and carried out, they lead to welfare and happiness, then you should accept and practice them. The highest authority is one's own experience to truth. Nothing should be accepted or faith alone, we have to examine to see whether it is logical, practical, beneficial, nor having examined a teaching by means of our reason as it sufficient to accept it as true intellectually. If we are to benefit from the truth, we have to experience it directly. Only then can we know that it is really true. The Buddha always emphasized that he taught only what he had experienced by direct knowledge, and he encouraged others develop such knowledge themselves to become their own authorities. Each of you make yourself an island, make yourself your refugee. There is no other refugee. Make truth your island, make truth your refugee. There is no other refugee. The only real refugee in life, the only solid ground on which to take a stand, the only authority that can give proper guidance and protection is truth. Dhamma, the law of nature, experienced and verified by oneself. Therefore, in his teaching, the Buddha always gave highest importance to the direct experience of truth. What he had experienced, he explained as clearly as possible so that others might have guidelines with which to work toward their own realization of truth. He said, "The teaching I have presented does not have separate outward and inward versions. Nothing has been kept hidden in all the first of the teacher. He had no esoteric doctrine for a chosen few. On the contrary, he wished to make the law of nature known as plainly and as widely as possible, so that as many people as possible might benefit from it. Neither was he interested in establishing a sect or a personality cult with himself as its center. The personality of the one who teaches, he maintained, is of minor importance compared to the teaching. His purpose was to show others how to liberate themselves, not to turn them into blind devotees. To a follower, he showed excessive veneration. From him, he said, "What do you gain by seeing this body, which is subject to corruption? He who sees the Dhamma sees me. He who sees me sees the Dhamma." Devotion toward another person, no matter how saintly, is not sufficient to liberate anyone. There can be no liberation or salvation without direct experience of reality. Therefore, truth has primacy, not the one who speaks it. All respect is due to whoever teaches the truth, but the best way to show that respect is by working to realize the truth oneself. When extravagant honors were paid to him near the end of his life, the Buddha commented, "This is not how an enlightened one is properly honored or shown respect or revered or reverenced or venerated. Rather, it is the monk or nun, the lay male or female follower who steadfastly walks on the path of Dhamma from the first steps to final goal, who practices Dhamma working in the right way, that honors, respects, reverences or venerates the enlightened one with the highest respect." What the Buddha taught was a way that each human being can be followed. He called this path the Noble Eightfold Path, meaning a practice of 8 interrelated parts. It is noble in the sense that anyone who walks on the path is bound to become a noble-hearted, saintly person freed from suffering. It is a path of insight into the nature of reality, a path of truth realization. In order to solve our problems, we have to see our situation as it really is. We must learn to recognize superficial apparent reality and also to penetrate beyond appearances so as to perceive subtle truths, then ultimate truths, finally to experience the truth of freedom from suffering. Whatever name we choose to give this truth of liberation, whether Nibbana, heaven, or anything else, is unimportant. The important thing is to experience it. The only way to experience truth directly is to look within, to observe oneself. All our lives we have been accustomed to look outward. We have always been interested in what is happening outside, what others are doing. We have rarely, if ever, tried to examine ourselves, our own mental and physical structure, our own actions, our own reality. Therefore, we remain unknown to ourselves. We do not realize how harmful this ignorance is, how much we remain the slaves of forces within ourselves of which we are unaware. This inner darkness must be dispelled to apprehend the truth. We must gain insight into our own nature in order to understand the nature of existence. Therefore, the path that the Buddha showed is a path of introspection, of self-observation. He said, within this very fathom-long body containing the mind with its perceptions, I make known the universe, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. The entire universe and the laws of nature by which it works are to be experienced within oneself. They can only be experienced within oneself. The path is also a path of purification. We investigate the truth about ourselves not out of idle intellectual curiosity, but rather with a definite purpose. By observing ourselves, we become aware for the first time of the conditioned reactions, the prejudices that cloud our mental vision, that hide reality from us and produce suffering. We recognize the accumulated inner tensions that keep us agitated, miserable, and we realize they can be removed. Gradually, we learn how to allow them to dissolve, and our minds become pure, peaceful, and happy. The path is a process requiring continual application. Sudden breakthroughs may come, but they are the result of sustained efforts. It is necessary to work step by step. With every step, however, the benefits are immediate. We do not follow the path in the hope of accruing benefits to be enjoyed only in the future, of attaining after death a heaven that is known here only by conjecture. The benefits must be concrete, vivid, personal, experienced here and now. Above all, it is a teaching to be practiced. Simply having faith in the Buddha or his teaching will not help to free us from suffering, neither will a merely intellectual understanding of the path. Both of these are of value only if they inspire us to put the teachings into the practice. Only the actual practice of what the Buddha taught will give concrete result and change our lives for the better. The Buddha said, someone may recite much of the texts, but he does not practice them. Such a heedless person is like a herdsman who only counts the cows of others. He does not enjoy the rewards of the life of a truth seeker. Another may be able to recite only a few words from the text, but if he lives the life of Dhamma, taking steps on the path from its beginning to the goal, then he enjoys the rewards of the life of a truth seeker. The path must be followed, the teaching must be implemented, otherwise it is meaningless exercise. It is not necessary to call oneself a Buddhist in order to practice this teaching. Labels are irrelevant. Suffering makes no distinctions but is common to all. Therefore, the remedy to be useful must be equally applicable to all. Neither is the practice reserved only for recluses who are divorced from ordinary life. Certainly, a period must be given in which to devote oneself exclusively to the task of learning how to practice. But having done so, one must apply the teaching in daily life. Someone who forsakes home and worldly responsibilities in order to follow the path has the opportunity to work more intensively, to assimilate the teaching more deeply, and therefore to progress more quickly. On the other hand, someone involved in worldly life, juggling the claims of many different responsibilities, can give only limited time to the practice. But whether homeless or householder, one must apply Dhamma. It is only applied Dhamma that gives results. If this is truly a way from suffering to peace, then as we progress in the practice, we should become more happy in our daily lives, more harmonious, more at peace with ourselves. At the same time, our relations with others should become more peaceful and harmonious. Instead of adding to the tensions of society, we should be able to make a positive contribution that will increase the happiness and welfare of all. To follow the path, we must live the life of Dhamma, of truth, of purity. This is the proper way to implement the teaching. Dhamma practiced correctly is the art of living. Questions and answers. Question. You keep referring to the Buddha. Are you teaching Buddhism? S.N. Goenka. I am not concerned with ism. I teach Dhamma, that is what the Buddha taught. He never taught any ism or sectarian doctrine. He taught something from which people of every background can benefit, an art of living. Remaining in ignorance is harmful for everyone. Developing wisdom is good for everyone. So, anyone can practice this technique and find benefit. A Christian will become a good Christian. A Jew will become a good Jew. A Muslim will become a good Muslim. A Hindu will become a good Hindu. A Buddhist will become a good Buddhist. One must become a good human being. Otherwise, one can never be a good Christian, a good Jew, a good Muslim, a good Hindu, a good Buddhist. How to become a good human being, that is most important. You talk about conditioning. Isn't this training really a kind of conditioning of the mind, even if a positive one? Answer. On the contrary, it is a process of deconditioning. Instead of imposing anything on the mind, it automatically removes unwholesome qualities so that only wholesome positive ones remain. By eliminating negatives, it uncovers the positivity which is the basic nature of a pure mind. But over a period of time, to sit in a particular posture and direct the attention in a certain way is a form of conditioning. If you do it as a game or mechanical ritual, then yes, you condition the mind. But that is a misuse of Vipassana. When it is practiced correctly, it enables you to experience truth directly for yourself. And from this experience, naturally understanding develops, which destroys all previous conditioning. Question. Isn't it selfish to forget about the word and just to sit and meditate all day? Answer. It would be if this were an end in itself. But it is a means to an end that is not at all selfish, a healthy mind. When your body is sick, you enter a hospital to recover health. You don't go there for your whole life, but simply to regain health, which you will then use in ordinary life. In the same way, you come to a meditation course to gain mental health, which you will then use in ordinary life for your good and for the good of others. Question. To remain happy and peaceful even when confronted by the suffering of others, isn't that sheer insensitivity? Answer. Being sensitive to the suffering of others does not mean that you must become sad yourself. Instead, you should remain calm and balanced so that you can act to alleviate their suffering. If you also become sad, you increase the unhappiness around you. You do not help others, you do not help yourself. Question. Why don't we live in a state of peace? Answer. Because wisdom is lacking. A life without wisdom is a life of illusion, which is a state of agitation, of misery. Our first responsibility is to live a healthy, harmonious life, good for ourselves and for all others. To do so, we must learn to use our faculty of self-observation, truth observation. Question. Why is it necessary to join a 10-day course to learn the technique? Answer. Well, if you could come for longer, that would be better still. But 10 days is the minimum time in which it is possible to grasp the outlines of the technique. Question. Why must we remain within the course site for the 10 days? Answer. Because you are here to perform an operation on your mind. An operation must be done in a hospital, in an operating theatre, protected from contamination. Here, within the boundaries of the course, you can perform the operation without being disturbed by any outside influence. When the course is over, the operation has ended and you are ready once again to face the world. Question. Does this technique heal the physical body? Yes, as a byproduct. Many psychosomatic diseases naturally disappear when mental tensions are dissolved. If the mind is agitated, physical diseases are bound to develop. When the mind becomes calm and pure, automatically they will go away. But if you take the curing of a physical disease as your goal, instead of the purification of your mind, you achieve neither one nor the other. I have found that people who join a course with the aim of curing a physical illness have their attention fixed only on their disease throughout the course. Today, is it better? No, not better. Today, is it improving? No, not improving. All the 10 days they waste in this way. But if the intention is simply to purify the mind, then many diseases automatically go away as a result of meditation. Question. What would you say is the purpose of life? Answer. To come out of misery. A human being has the wonderful ability to go deep inside, observe reality and come out of suffering. Not to use this ability is to waste one's life. Use it to live a really healthy, happy life. Question. You speak of being overpowered by negativity. How about being overpowered by positivity, for example, by love? Answer. What you call positivity is the real nature of mind. When the mind is free of conditioning, it is always full of love, pure love, and you feel peaceful and happy. If you remove the negativity, then positivity remains, purity remains. Let the entire world be overwhelmed by this positivity. To walk on the path. In the city of Savatthi in the northern India, the Buddha had a large center where people would come to meditate and to listen to his Dhamma talks. Every evening, one young man used to come to hear his discourses. For years, he came to listen to the Buddha, but never put any of the teaching into practice. After a few years, one evening, this man came a little early and found the Buddha alone. He approached him and said, "Sir, I have a question that keeps arising in my mind, raising doubts." "Oh, there should not be any doubts on the path of Dhamma. Have them clarified. What is your question?" "Sir, for many years now, I have been coming to your meditation center and I have noticed that there are a large number of recluses around you, monks and nuns, and still larger number of lay people, both men and women. For years, some of them have been coming to you. Some of them I can see have certainly reached the final stage. Quite obviously, they are fully liberated. I can also see that others have experienced some change in their lives. They are better than they were before, although I cannot say that they are fully liberated. But, sir, I also notice that a large number of people, including myself, are as they were, or sometimes they are even worse. They have not changed at all, or have not changed for the better. Why should this be, sir? People come to you, such a great man, fully enlightened, such a powerful, compassionate person. Why don't you use your power and compassion to liberate them all?" The Buddha smiled and said, "Young man, where do you live? What is your native place?" "Sir, I live here in Savatthi, this capital city of the state Kosala." "Yes, but your facial features show that you are not from this part of the country. Where are you from originally?" "Sir, I am from the city of Rajgha, the capital of the state of Magad. I came and settled here in Savatthi a few years ago." "And have you severed all connections with Rajgha?" "No, sir. I still have relatives there. I have friends there. I have business there." "Then, certainly, you must go from Savatthi to Rajgah quite often." "Yes, sir. Many times each year I visit Rajgah the return to Savatthi." Having travelled and returned so many times on the path from here to Rajgah, certainly you must know the path very well." "Oh, yes, sir. I know it perfectly. I might also almost say that even if I was blindfolded, I could find the path to Rajgah. So many times have I walked it." "And your friends, those who know you well, certainly they must know that you are from Rajgah and have settled here. They must know that you often visit Rajgah and return, and that you know the path from here to Rajgah perfectly." "Oh, yes, sir. All those who are close to me know that I often go to Rajgah and that I know the path perfectly." "Then it must happen that some of them come to you and ask you to explain them the path from here to Rajgah. Do you hide anything, or do you explain the path to them clearly?" "What is there to hide, sir? I explain it to them as clearly as I can. You start walking towards the east and then head towards Banaras and continue onward until you reach Gaya and then Rajgah. I explain it very plainly to them, sir." "And these people to whom you give such clear explanation, do all of them reach Rajgah?" "How can that be, sir? Those who walk the entire path to its end, only they will reach Rajgah." "This is what I want to explain to you, young man. People keep coming to me, knowing that this is someone who has walked the path from here to Nibbana, and so knows it perfectly. They come to me and ask, what is the path of Nibbana, to liberation? And what is there to hide? I explain it to them clearly. This is the path. If somebody just nods his head and says, well said, a very good path, but I won't take a step on it, a wonderful path, but I won't take the trouble to walk over it, then how can such a person reach the final goal? I do not carry anyone on my shoulders to take him to the final goal. Nobody can carry anyone else on his shoulders to the final goal. At most, with love and compassion, one can say, well, this is the path and this is how I walked on it. You also walk, and you will reach the final goal. But each person has to walk himself, has to take every step on the path himself. He who has taken one step on the path is one step nearer the goal. He who has taken 100 steps in 100 steps nearer the goal. He who has taken all the steps on the path has reached the final goal. You have to walk on the path yourself. Chapter 2, the starting point. The source of suffering lies within each of us. When we understand our own reality, we shall recognize the solution to the problem of suffering. Know thyself. All wise persons have advised, we must begin by knowing our own nature. Otherwise, we can never solve our own problems or the problems of the world. But actually, what do we know about ourselves? We are each convinced of the importance of ourselves, of the uniqueness of ourselves, but our knowledge of ourselves is only superficial. At deeper levels, we do not know ourselves at all. The Buddha examined the phenomena of human being by examining his own nature. Laying aside all preconceptions, he explored reality within and realized that every being is a composite of 5 processes, 4 of them mental and 1 physical. Matter. Let us begin with the physical aspect. This is the most obvious, the most apparent portion of ourselves, readily perceived by all the senses, and yet how little we really know about it. Superficially, one can control the body, it moves and acts according to the conscious will. But on another level, all the internal organs function beyond our control, without our knowledge. At a subtler level, we know nothing. Experientially, of the incessant biochemical reactions occurring within each cell of the body. But this is still not the ultimate reality of the mental phenomena. Ultimately, the seemingly solid body is composed of the subatomic particles and empty space. What is more, even these subatomic particles have no real solidity. The existence span of one of them is much less than a trillionth of a second. Particles continuously arise and vanish, passing into and out of existence, like a flow of vibration. This is the ultimate reality of the body of all matter discovered by the Buddha 2500 years ago. Through their own investigations, modern scientists have recognized and accepted this ultimate reality of the material universe. However, these scientists have not become liberated, enlightened persons. Out of curiosity, they have investigated the nature of the universe using their intellects and relying on instruments to verify their theories. In contrast, the Buddha was motivated not simply by curiosity but rather by the wish to find a way out of suffering. He used no instrument in his investigation other than his own mind. The truth that he discovered was the result not of intellectualizing but of his own direct experience, and that is why it could liberate him. He found that the entire material universe was composed of particles called in Pali kalpas or indivisible units. These units exhibit in endless variation the basic qualities of matter: mass, cohesion, temperature, and movement. They combine to form structures which seem to have some permanence, but actually these are all composed of minuscule kalpas which are in a state of continuously arising and passing away. This is the ultimate reality of a matter, a constant stream of waves or particles. This is the body which we call myself. Mind. Along with the physical process, there is the psychic process, the mind. Although it cannot be touched or seen, it seems even more intimately connected with ourselves than our bodies. We may picture a future existence without the body, but we cannot imagine any such existence without the mind. Yet, how little we know about the mind, and how little we are able to control it. How often it refuses to do what we want and does what we do not want. Our control of the conscious mind is tenuous enough, but the conscious seems totally beyond our power or understanding, filled with forces of which we may not approve or be aware. As he examined the body, the Buddha also examined the mind and found that, in broad overall terms, it consisted of four processes: consciousness, Vinana, perception, Sana, sensation, Vedana, and reaction, Sankhara. The first process, consciousness, is the receiving part of the mind, the act of undifferentiated awareness or cognition. It simply registers the occurrence of any phenomena, the reception of any input, physical or mental. It notes the raw data of experience without assigning labels or making value judgments. The second mental process is perception, the act of recognition. This part of the mind identifies whatever has been noted by the consciousness. It distinguishes, labels, and categorizes the incoming raw data and makes evaluations, positive or negative. The next part of the mind is sensation. Actually, as soon as any input is received, sensation arises, a signal that something is happening. So long as the input is not evaluated, the sensation remains neutral. But once a value is attached to the incoming data, the sensation becomes pleasant or unpleasant, depending on the evaluation given. If the sensation is pleasant, a wish forms to prolong and intensify the experience. If it is an unpleasant sensation, the wish is to stop it, to push it away. The mind reacts with liking or disliking. For example, when the ear is functioning normally and one hears a sound, cognition is at work. When the sound is recognized as words with positive or negative connotations, perception has started to function. Next sensation comes into play. If the words are praise, a pleasant sensation arises. If they are abuse, an unpleasant sensation arises. At once, reaction takes place. If the sensation is pleasant, one starts liking it, wanting more words of praise. If the sensation is unpleasant, one starts disliking it, wanting to stop the abuse. The same steps occur whenever any of the other senses receives an input: consciousness, perception, sensation, reaction. These four mental functions are even more fleeting than the ephemeral particles composing the material reality. Each moment that the senses come into contact with any object, the four mental processes occur with lightning like rapidity and repeat themselves with each subsequent moment of contact. So rapidly does this occur, however, that one is unaware of what is happening. It is only when a particular reaction has been repeated over a longer period of time and has taken a pronounced intensified form that awareness of it develops at the conscious level. The most striking aspect of this description of a human being is not what it includes, but what it omits. Whether we are Western or Eastern, whether Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, or anything else, each of us has a congenital assurance that there is an I somewhere within us, a continuing identity. We operate on the unthinking assumption that the person who existed 10 years ago is essentially the same person who exists today. Who will exist 10 years from now? Perhaps who will still exist in a future life after death? No matter what philosophies or theories or beliefs we hold as true, actually we each live our lives with the deep rooted conviction I was, I am, I shall be. The Buddha challenged this instinctive assertion of identity. By doing so, he was not expounding one more speculative view to combat the theories of others. He repeatedly emphasized that he was not putting forth an opinion but simply describing the truth that he had experienced and that any ordinary man can experience. The enlightened one has cast aside all theories. He said, for he has seen the reality of matter, sensation, perception, reaction, and consciousness, and their arising and passing away. Despite appearances, he had found that each human being is in fact a series of separate but related events. Each event is the result of the preceding one and follows it without any interval. The unbroken progression of closely connected events gives the appearance of continuity, of identity, but this is only an apparent reality, not ultimate truth. We may give a river a name, but actually it is a flow of water, never pausing in its course. We may think of the light of a candle as something constant, but if we look closely, we see that it is really a flame arising from a wick which burns for a moment to be replaced at once by a new flame, moment after moment. We talk to the light of an electric lamp, never pausing to think that in reality it is like the river, a constant flow. In this case, a flow of energy caused by very high frequency oscillations taking place within the filament. Every moment something new arises as a product of the past to be replaced by something new in the following moment. The succession of events is so rapid and continuous that it is difficult to discern. At a particular point in the process, one cannot say that what occurs now is the same as what preceded it, nor can one say that it is not the same. Nevertheless, the process occurs. In the same way, the Buddha realized a person is not a finished, unchanging entity, but a process flowing from moment to moment. There is no real being, merely an ongoing flow, a continuous process of becoming. Of course, in daily life, we must deal with each other as persons of more or less defined, unchanging nature. We must accept external apparent reality, or else we could not function at all. External reality is a reality, but only a superficial one. At a deeper level, the reality is that the entire universe, animate and inanimate, is in a constant state of becoming, of arising and passing away. Each of us is in fact a stream of constantly changing subatomic particles, along with which the process of conscious perception, sensation, reaction change even more rapidly than the physical process. This is the ultimate reality of the self with which each of us is so concerned. This is the course of events in which we are involved. If we can understand it properly by direct experience, we shall find the clue to lead us out of suffering. Questions and answers. Question. When you say mind, I am not sure what you mean. I can't find the mind. S.N. Goenka. It is everywhere, with every atom. Wherever you feel anything, the mind is there. The mind feels. Then, by the mind, you don't mean the brain? Oh, no. Here is the West. You think that the mind is only in the head. It is a wrong notion. Mind is the whole body? Yes, the whole body contains the mind, the whole body. You speak of the experience of I only in a negative terms. Hasn't it a positive side? Isn't there an experience of I which fills a person with joy, peace and rapture? By meditation, you will find that all such sensual pleasures are impermanent. They come and pass away. If this I really enjoys them, if they are my pleasures, then I must have some mastery over them. But they just arise and pass away without my control. What I is there? I am speaking not of sensual pleasure, but of a very deep level. At that level, I is of no importance at all. When you reach that level, the ego is dissolved. There is only joy. The question of I does not arise then. Well, instead of I, let us say the experience of a person. Feeling feels, there is no one to feel it. Things are just happening, that's all. Now it seems to you that there must be an I who feels. But if you practice, you will reach the stage where your ego dissolves. Then your question will disappear. I am here because I felt I needed to come here. Yes, quite true. For conventional purposes, we cannot run away from I or mine, but clinging to them, taking them as real in an ultimate sense will bring only suffering. I was wondering whether there are people who cause suffering for us. Nobody causes suffering for you. You cause the suffering for yourself by generating tensions in the mind. If you know how not to do that, it becomes easy to remain peaceful and happy in every situation. What about when someone else is doing wrong to us? You must not allow people to do wrong to you. Whenever someone does something wrong, he harms others. And at the same time, he harms himself. If you allow him to do wrong, you are encouraging him to do wrong. You must use all your strength to stop him, but with only goodwill, compassion, and sympathy for that person. If you act with hatred or anger, then you aggravate the situation. But you cannot have goodwill for such a person unless your mind is calm and peaceful. So practice to develop peace within yourself and then you can solve the problem. What is the point of seeking peace within when there is no peace in the world? The world will be peaceful only when the people of the world are peaceful and happy. The change has to begin with each individual. If the jungle is withered and you want to restore it to life, you must water each tree of that jungle. If you want world peace, you ought to learn how to be peaceful yourself. Only then can you bring peace to the world. I can understand how meditation will help maladjusted, unhappy people, but how about someone who feels satisfied with his life, who is already happy? Someone who remains satisfied with the superficial pleasures of life is ignorant of the agitation deep within the mind. He is under the illusion that he is a happy person, but his pleasures are not lasting, and the tensions generated in the conscious keep increasing to appear sooner or later at the conscious level of the mind. When they do, this so called happy person becomes miserable. So, why not start working here and now to avert that situation? Is your teaching Mahayana or Hinayan? Neither. The word yana actually means a vehicle that will carry you to the final goal, but today it is mistakenly given a sectarian connotation. The Buddha never taught anything sectarian. He taught Dhamma, which is universal. The universality is what attracted me to the teachings of the Buddha, which gave me benefit, and therefore this universal Dhamma is what I offer to one and all with all my love and compassion. For me, Dhamma is neither Mahayana nor Hinayana nor any sect. The Buddha and the scientist. The physical reality is changing constantly every moment. This is what the Buddha realized by examining himself. With his strongly concentrated mind, he penetrated deeply into his own nature and found that the entire material structure is composed of minute subatomic particles which are continuously arising and vanishing. In the snapping of a finger or the blinking of an eye, he said, each one of these particles arises and passes away many trillions of times. Unbelievable. Anyone will think who observes only the apparent reality of the body, which seems so solid, so permanent. I used to suppose that the phrase many trillions of times might be an idiomatic expression, not to be taken literally. However, modern science has confirmed this statement. Several years ago, an American scientist received the Nobel Prize in Physics. For a long time, he had studied and conducted experiments to learn about the subatomic particles of which the physical universe is composed. It was already known that these particles are arising and passing away with great rapidity over and over again. Now, this scientist decided to develop an instrument that would be able to count how many times a particle arises and passes away in 1 second. He very rightly called the instrument that he invented a bubble chamber, and he found that in 1 second a subatomic particle arises and vanishes 10 to the power 22 times. The truth that this scientist discovered is the same as that which the Buddha found. But what a great difference between them. Some of my American students who had taken courses in India later returned to their country and they visited the scientist. They reported to me that despite the fact that he has discovered this reality, he is still an ordinary person with the usual stock of misery that all ordinary people have. He is not totally liberated from suffering. No, that scientist has not become an enlightened person, not been freed from all suffering, because he has not experienced truth directly. What he has learned is still only intellectual wisdom. He believes this truth because he has faith in the instrument which B has invited. But he has not experienced the truth himself. I have nothing against this man nor against modern science. However, one must not be a scientist only of the world outside. Like the Buddha, one should also be a scientist of the world within, in order to experience truth directly. Personal realization of truth will automatically change the habit pattern of the mind so that one starts to live according to the truth. Every action becomes directed towards one's own good and the good of others. If this inner experience is missing, science is liable to be misused for destructive ends. But if we become scientists of the reality within, we shall make proper use of science for the happiness of all. The immediate cause, chapter 3. The real world bear no resemblance to the world of fairy tales in which everyone lives happily ever after. We cannot avoid the truth that life is imperfect, incomplete, unsatisfactory, the truth of the existence of suffering. Given this reality, the important things for us to know are whether suffering has a cause, and if so, whether it is possible to remove that cause so that suffering may be removed. If the events that cause our suffering are simply random occurrences over which we can have no control or influence, then we are powerless and might as well give up the attempt to find a way out of suffering. Or if our sufferings are dictated by an omnipotent being acting in an arbitrary and inscrutable manner, then we ought to find out how to propitiate this being so that he will no longer inflict suffering on us. The Buddha realized that our suffering is not merely a product of chance. There are causes behind it, as there are causes for all phenomena. The law of cause and effect, karma, is universal and fundamental to existence, nor are the causes beyond our control. Karma. The word karma, or in its more widely known Sanskrit form, karma, is popularly understood as meaning fate. Unfortunately, the connotations of this word are exactly opposite to what the Buddha intended by karma. Fate is something outside our control, the decree of providence, what has been preordained for each one of us. Karma, however, literally means action. Our own actions are the causes of whatever we experience. All beings own their deeds, inherit their deeds, originate from their deeds, are tied to their deeds. Their deeds are their refuge. As their deeds are base or noble, so will be their lives. Everything that we encounter in life is a result of our own actions. Consequently, we can each become master of our fate by becoming master of our actions. Each of us is responsible for the actions that give rise to our suffering. Each of us has the means to end the suffering in our actions. The Buddha said, "You are your own master, you make your own future." As it is, each of us is like a blindfolded man who has never learned to drive, sitting behind the wheel of a speeding car on a busy highway. He is not likely to reach his destination without mishap. He may think that he is driving the car, but actually the car is driving him. If he wants to avoid an accident, let alone arrive at his goal, he should remove the blindfold, learn how to operate the vehicle, and steer it out of danger as quickly as possible. Similarly, we must become aware of what we do and then learn to perform actions that will lead us where we really wish to go. 3 types of actions. There are 3 types of actions: physical, vocal, and mental. Normally, we attach most importance to physical actions less to vocal actions, and least to mental actions. Beating a person appears to us a graver action than speaking to him insulting, and both seem more serious than an unexpressed ill will toward the person. Certainly, this would be the view according to the man made laws of each country. But according to Dhamma, the law of nature, mental action is most important. A physical or vocal action assumes totally different significance according to the intention with which it is done. A surgeon uses his scalpel to perform an emergency life saving operation which turns out to be unsuccessful, leading to the death of the patient. A murderer uses his dagger to stab his victim to death. Physically, their actions are similar with the same effect, but mentally, they are poles apart. The surgeon acts out of compassion, the murderer out of hatred. The result each achieves will be totally different according to his mental action. Similarly, in the case of a speech, the intention is most important. A man quarrels with a colleague and abuses him, calling him a fool. He speaks out of anger. The same man sees the child playing in the mud and tenderly calls him a fool. He speaks out of love. In both cases, the same words are spoken, but to express virtually opposite states of mind. It is the intention of our speech which determines the result. Words and deeds, or their external effects, are merely consequences of mental action. They are properly judged according to the nature of the intention to which they give expression. It is the mental action which is the real karma, the cause which will give results in future. Understanding this truth, the Buddha announced, mind precedes all phenomena, mind matters most, everything is mind made. If with an impure mind you speak or act, then suffering follows you. As the cart wheel follows the foot of the draft animal, if the pure mind you speak or act, then happiness follows you as a shadow that never departs. The cause of suffering, but which mental actions determine our fate. If the mind consists of nothing but consciousness, perception, sensation, and reaction, then which of these gives rise to suffering? Each of them is involved to some degree in the process of suffering. However, the first three are primarily passive. Consciousness merely receives the raw data of experience, perception places the data in a category, sensation signals the occurring of the previous steps. The job of these three is only to digest incoming information. But when the mind starts to react, passivity gives way to attraction or repulsion, liking or disliking. This reaction sets in motion a fresh chain of events. At the beginning of the chain is reaction, sankhara. This is why the Buddha said, whatever suffering arises has a reaction and its cause. If all reactions cease to be, then there is no more suffering. The real karma, the real cause of suffering, is a reaction of the mind. One fleeting reaction of liking or disliking may not be very strong and may not give much result, but it can have a cumulative effect. The reaction is repeated moment after moment, intensifying with each repetition and developing into craving or aversion. This is what in his first sermon the Buddha called tanha, literally thirst, the mental habit of insatiable longing for what is not, which implies an equal and irremediable dissatisfaction with what is. What the stronger longing and dissatisfaction become is the deeper their influence on our thinking, our speech, and our actions, and the more suffering they will cause. Some reactions, the Buddha said, are like lines drawn on the surface of a pool of water. As soon as they are drawn, they are erased. Others are like lines traced on a sandy beach. If drawn in the morning, they are gone by night, wiped away by the tide or the wind. Others are like lines cut deeply into rock with chisel and hammer. They too will be obliterated as the rock erodes, but it will take ages for them to disappear. Throughout each day of our lives, the mind keeps generating reactions. But if at the end of the day we try to remember them, we shall be able to recall only one or two which made a deep impression that day. Again, if at the end of a month we try to remember all our reactions, we shall be able to recall only one or two which made the deepest impression that month. Again, at the end of a year, we shall be able to recall only the one or two reactions that left the deepest impression during that year. Such deep reactions as these are very dangerous and lead to immense suffering. The first step toward emerging from such suffering is to accept the reality of it, not as a philosophical concept or an article of faith, but as a fact of existence which affects each one of us in our lives. With this acceptance and an understanding of what suffering is and why we suffer, we can stop being driven and start to drive. By learning to realize directly our own nature, we can set ourselves on the path leading out of suffering. Question and answers. Question. Isn't suffering a natural part of life? Why should we try to escape from it? Answer. We have become so involved in suffering that to be free from it seems unnatural. But when you experience the real happiness of mental purity, you will know that this is the natural state of the mind. Can't the experience of suffering enable people and help them to grow in character? Yes, in fact, this technique deliberately uses suffering as a tool to make one a noble person. But it will work only if you learn how to observe suffering objectively. If you are attached to your suffering, the experience will not ennoble you. You will always remain miserable. Isn't taking control of our action a kind of suppression? No. You learn just to observe objectively whatever is happening. If someone is angry and tries to hide his anger, to swallow it, then yes, it's suppression. But by observing the anger, you will find that automatically it passes away. You become free from the anger if you learn how to observe it objectively. If we keep observing ourselves, how can we live life in any natural way? We will be so busy watching ourselves that we cannot act freely or spontaneously. This is not what people find after completing a meditation course. Here you learn a mental training that will give you the ability to observe yourself in daily life, whatever you need to do so. Not that you will keep practicing with closed eyes all day throughout your life, but just as the strength you gain by physical exercise helps you in daily life, so this mental exercise will also strengthen you. What you call free spontaneous action is really blind reaction, which is always harmful. By learning to observe yourself, You will find that whenever a difficult situation arises in life, you can keep the balance of your mind. With that balance, you can choose freely how to act. You will take real action which is always positive, always beneficial for you and for all others. Aren't there any chance happenings, random occurrences without a cause? Nothing happens without a cause. It is not possible. Sometimes our limited senses and intellects cannot clearly find it. But that doesn't mean that there is no cause. Are you saying that everything in life is predetermined? Well, certainly our past actions will give fruit, good or bad. They will determine the type of life we have, the general situation in which we find ourselves, but that does not mean that whatever happens to us is predestined, ordained by our past actions, and nothing else can happen. This is not the case. Our past actions influence the flow of our lives, directing them towards pleasant or unpleasant experiences. But present actions are equally important. Nature has given us the ability to become masters of our present actions. With that mastery, we can change our future. But surely, the actions of others also affect us. Of course, we are influenced by the people around us and by our environment, and we keep influencing them as well. If the majority of people, for example, are in a favor of violence, then war and destruction occur, causing many to suffer. But if people start to purify their mind, then violence cannot happen. The root of the problem lies in the mind of each individual human being, because society is composed of individuals. If each person starts changing, then society will change and war and destruction will become rare events. How can we help each other if each person must face the result of his own actions? Our own mental actions have an influence on others. If we generate nothing but negativity in the mind, the negativity has a harmful effect on those who come into contact with us. If we fill the mind with positivity and goodwill toward others, then it will have a helpful effect on those around us. You cannot control the actions, the karma of others, but you can become master of yourself in order to have a positive influence on those around you. Why is being wealthy good karma? If it is, does that mean to say that most people in the West have good karma and most people in the third world have bad karma? Wealth alone is not a good karma. If you become wealthy but remain miserable, what is the use of this wealth? Having wealth and also happiness, real happiness, that is good karma. Most important is to be happy whether you are wealthy or not. Surely it is unnatural never to react. It seems so if you have experienced only the wrong habit pattern of an impure mind. But it is natural for a pure mind to remain detached, full of love, compassion, goodwill, joy, equanimity. Learn to experience that. How can we involved in life unless we react? Instead of reacting, you learn to act with a balanced mind. Vipassana meditators do not become inactive like vegetables. They learn how to act positively. If you can change your life pattern from reaction to action, then you have attained something very valuable, and you can change it by practicing Vipassana. Seed and fruit. As the cause is, so the effect will be. As the seed is, so the fruit will be. As the action is, so the result will be. In the same soil, a farmer plants two seeds, one a seed of sugarcane, the other a seed of a neem tree, a tropical tree which is very bitter. Two seeds in the same earth, receiving the same water, the same sunshine, the same air, nature gives the same nourishment to both. Two tiny plants emerge and starts growing. And what has happened to the neem tree? It has developed with bitterness in every fiber, while the sugarcane has developed with every fiber of it to be sweet. Why is nature, or if you prefer, why is God so kind to one and so cruel to the other? No. Nature is neither kind nor cruel. It works according to fixed laws. Nature only helps the quality of the seed to manifest. All the nourishment merely helps the seed to reveal the quality that is latent within itself. The seed of the sugarcane has the quality of sweetness. Therefore, the plant will have nothing but sweetness. The seed of the neem tree has the quality of bitterness. The plant will have nothing but bitterness. As the seed is, so the fruit will be. The farmer goes to the neem tree, bows down 3 times, walks around it 108 times, and then offers flowers, incense, candles, fruit, and sweet. And then he starts praying, "Oh, neem god, please give me sweet mangoes. I want sweet mangoes." Poor neem god, he cannot give them. He has no power to do so. If someone wants sweet mangoes, he ought to plant a seed of a mango tree. Then he need not cry and beg for help from anyone. The fruit that he will get will be nothing but sweet mangoes. As the seed is, so the fruit will be. Our difficulty, our ignorance is that we remain unheedful while planting seeds. We keep planting seeds of neem, but when the time comes for fruit, we are suddenly alert. We want sweet mangoes and we keep crying and praying and hoping for mangoes. This does not work.